Excellent. Okay,
Amazing.
so just an easier way to present.
That's great.
Just stop share. Cool, we'll let everybody in.
Alrighty.
Awesome. Welcome everybody into our meeting. We will begin shortly, I think.
Yes.
Shall we begin?
Yeah, I reckon.
All right, let's do it. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to, what is it today? The Customer is Mostly Always Right, the 12th installment of our Power Up tutorial series. I think this is probably nearing the end of our Power Up tutorials at this stage. We definitely have one next week. The goal of these webinars has been and is to provide tourism businesses in the NT a safe space to upskill as we unpack topics that have ongoing relevance with you and with your business. These weekly webinars are brought to you by the Business Enterprise Development team, Anna Dakin from Tourism Central Australia and myself, Stephen Miles from Tourism Top End, will be your hosts. This series is structured around the 9 pillars within the Business Enterprise Development Program. These 9 pillars allow you to gauge where your business is at in regards to these pillars, and also give you the opportunity to goal set and move in amongst those pillars. Anna and myself, we're keen to support you and your business through this process, and if you'd like to give us a call or an email, we'd love to make a time with you to go through this program and see how it can assist your business. The housekeeping for today is the webinar will consist of about a 45-minute presentation followed by a 15-minute Q&A. We will need also your input around the middle of the presentation for a poll, so be ready. And also, if you do have any questions during the presentation, please write them as always in the chat area at any time. We'll collate them, and if they're applicable there and then, we'll ask them. Otherwise, we'll save them up for the Q&A at the end. Today, Avril Carter, Australasian Sales Director from Review Pro, is going to assist us in taking control of the post-pandemic communication to drive trust and bookings. So Avril, welcome back. It's really nice to have you here again today.
Hi there, and hi everyone. Thanks, Stephen and Anna. Thanks for having me. And hopefully today's session will give you a few tips and provide some insight that I want to share with you. I think at this point, I think it's worth at the moment, I think, acknowledging just how hard everything is at the moment. And I know you guys in the Territory are at a different stage to everyone else. I'm based in Queensland, but I work with tourism businesses all around Australia and New Zealand, and everyone's in different stages and different spaces and coping with all sorts of challenges. And with Review Pro, we work wholly and solely with the tourism industry. So we're kind of part of the ecosystem, if you like. So, and that's all around the world. So we're seeing it not only in Australia, New Zealand, but also internationally as well. So, and so at this point, I know that people have been having time to delve into some webinars, and you know, I guess one positive is that I do hear from businesses that have said have been able to take a little bit of time out to do a few things that maybe they haven't in the past, especially around strategy and thinking about things that they just haven't had the time to do before. So, you know, maybe that's one positive that's come out of it. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to acknowledge that. And today, what I wanted to really do is kind of focus on what we or I can share with you as what we call guest feedback specialists, and what we are seeing in some suggestions and insights really around how to use communication as a critical tool, not just in this recovery phase or in this phase that we're in now, but really as an ongoing thing. This is all kind of best practice for all the time, not just for now, but quite specific for now as well. And if you think about communication, not just in terms of guests and reviewers and prospective travellers and so on, but also if you think about it just in terms of your own business, or whether you're even with your family and the way that you're listening to news and we're digesting things, I think at the moment we all agree that communication is such a key thing. And I know and appreciate that even in terms of my own company that I work for, that their communication has been really great with us through this. And so acknowledging that that makes a difference, and then think about how that impacts not only your business, but also your guests or your prospective guests and so on. So anyway, just a little intro. I'm going to share my screen and share a presentation with you. So we should be right about now.
Looking good.
So hopefully you guys can see that. Perfect. So yeah, today, as I said, the focus is really around post-pandemic communication to drive trust and bookings. And as I said, not necessarily specific related to post-pandemic, but general tips around using communication to really stimulate trust and ultimately bookings. So as we enter this new phase, many hotels and tourism businesses are obviously reopening. Some are reopening, some are closing again and reopening again. And we're facing this whole new landscape. So today I'm going to discuss how you can garner that trust and drive bookings via these communication habits. We're going to see how and why your online reputation is of utmost importance as doors open. Consider the new guest and how using guest feedback and technology such as automation, AI and guest messaging can also maybe help you win the business and stand out from your competitors. I'm going to share a little bit of data related to traveller trends and sentiment and behaviour, some best practices in terms of pandemic communications across your digital footprint, how to best use management response for pandemic reviews and queries, how analysing guest intelligence can help to understand expectations and shape communications. And then finally, we'll take a look at the new guest, what that looks like, and how AI and automation are changing the guest experience. So a little bit about ReviewPro. We've been around for around 10 years, and our solutions are all around understanding and acting upon guest feedback. So as you can see there, we work with currently over 60,000 different clients and partners around the world, whether they be small independent businesses, hotel groups and chains, tourism businesses, destinations like Tourism NT and Tourism Central Australia and Tourism Top End. Investors in businesses use ReviewPro to analyse online sentiment in terms of valuing businesses. And so we're really working with clients and partners mainly to leverage what we call guest intelligence, which is around guest feedback, in a way that can positively impact both the guest experience and also your results. So these are our solutions. Our main ones are online reputation management, a guest survey platform, more recently guest experience automation, which is around AI, chatbots and guest messaging. And they're all supported by case management and workflow tools that help you act upon that feedback. We're also part of the Shiji Group, and Shiji are a hospitality tech expert, and they provide technology solutions for hospitality, so things like payment systems, distribution, operation platforms, and so on. So we fit into that group of companies. In terms of the Northern Territory, I think I mentioned this last time, but just a few different ways that you can connect with ReviewPro. I believe that many of you may have also received reports now from Tourism NT, sharing some information that's come via the Tourism Northern Territory partnership with ReviewPro. So that's one way to gain data. Some of you may already have access to ReviewPro on your own, so you may have your own subscription. And also through the Quality Tourism Accreditation Framework. Some of you may have access through that. So there's a few different ways that you can connect with us. So we're going to dive into some online reputation data to highlight what's happening at an aggregated level. What I'm going to show you is essentially, it's the same trend that we're seeing across different markets and segments around the world. We're really seeing the same thing everywhere. So it's nothing unique, particularly to the Northern Territory, but this is just showing online review volume. And seeing the trend, and not surprisingly, as we know, because obviously businesses have been closed and no one's been travelling, that not surprisingly there's less reviews, which you may think, you know, it's not exactly brain surgery. We all know that would have occurred. It's not a surprise. But the reason that we highlight this is that it's really important that you have a strategy in place during the recovery phase to encourage guest feedback for multiple reasons. The same reasons that reviews are always important, so like regardless of the time, is understanding your guest and to help other travellers make purchasing decisions. But in the recovery phase, it's even more critical because guest needs have changed and prospective bookers need more recent reviews and testimonials from people that have experienced travelling now, not before the pandemic. And that's what people are looking for. It's always the case with reviews. Generally, the pattern of behaviour of consumers when they're looking to book will look for reviews and look for testimonials, and they'll always look for something the most recent and the most relevant. So they're looking for things that have happened recently and something relevant to their own travel. So for that, by that I mean, example is maybe a family. So if I was travelling as a young family and I was looking to go somewhere and I was reading reviews, if I spotted reviews that were by someone that mentions they travelled as a family, I'm more likely to read that review because I know that that is going to resonate with me and what I'm expecting, and that will be of more value to me than someone writing about if they were travelling for a honeymoon or something like that. So we'll cover a bit more of this as we go through the session and highlight ways that you can embrace this and capture new business. So as always, it's also important to use your tools to measure all aspects of guest feedback. So not just your review volume, which is obviously very important, but also your distribution of reviews. Have all your platforms changed? So do you see a decrease from everywhere? Who's recovering quicker than others? What other trends are you seeing across guest feedback channels? Most importantly, remember that review sites and third-party sites, so when I say third-party, I mean things like online travel agents like Expedia, Booking and so on. All of those, and then the review sites like TripAdvisor, and let's class Google as a review site, they all they all have algorithms in terms of where you're placed and where you're seen, and they haven't changed, and they all revolve around review volume, recency of reviews, and the quality of the reviews, so what they're scoring and what they're saying. And also many of them also take into account management response, so if you're responding. So remember that you really need a strategy to grow reviews. You also need to consider all your key distribution channels in terms of reviews, and ensure that you have up-to-date guest feedback on those channels. So if, you know, Google and you're getting reviews on Google so that you can direct traffic to your own website is important, then you really, really need to know, have you got recent reviews on Google, and how good are they? Are they relevant? Are you responding? And so on. And I believe some of this information would have come in your report probably that came through from Tourism NT. So consider the importance also of using your guest feedback tools, not only to measure indexes and scores, so in terms of what people are rating by a quantity factor, but also capture guest sentiment via semantic analysis, which is looking at what are guests saying about their experience, what's impacting their stay, and which aspects are important to be monitoring and capturing in order to not only respond, but to act on and use to make informed decisions about operations and your communication and revenue strategy. Like, how does this also compare to your competitors, for example? So to help understand the impact that COVID-19 is having on online reputation, we created this category called medical and health within the semantic analysis tool. And this detects concepts and synonyms in 17 different languages related specifically to the coronavirus. So things like the words COVID-19, pandemic, virus, and all that kind of thing are all formed and put into a category called medical and health. That makes it easier for you as a business to see how many people are mentioning those things, and are they saying it in a positive or a negative way? Because as you'll see, and you've probably maybe seen already, that people are already mentioning this in many of their reviews, because they feel like that's important to share. Because as I said before, people are all, that's in their mindset when they're thinking about traveling, is how are they handling this? What's it going to be like? What's it going to be like going and staying there now? And so they're mentioning it afterwards. So it's important to know what they're saying to other people, but obviously it's also important for you to take that information to be able to assess how well you're doing, in terms of either are you communicating well and setting expectations, and are you delivering? So you can even filter mentions, saying so COVID, for example, and quickly and easily see that. You can even set up, if you've got access to Review Pro, you can set up reports and schedule reports and even alerts around that topic, so no mentions are missed. And this is just relating to this, but obviously you can do this across any semantic mention that is important to you as a business. So see there, for example, internet, Wi-Fi, bathroom. So any of those things that are important to you that you want to monitor, you can do through semantic analysis. So we can drill down to specific mentions to see specifically which comments are relevant to the search. In some cases, guests are overall happy with how, in this case, as you can see here, with how these businesses are handling the experience. And they've specifically referenced, as you can see, an excellent base to change scenery whilst trying to they're mentioning social distancing, as you can see in their reviews. And mentioning many people are mentioning the coronavirus, and these people are all really happy with it. So that as a prospective traveller, I'm going to read that and it's going to give me confidence to book and travel, because I see that things are being handled well. In some cases, we see that these mentions can actually help you maybe identify where you might improve your efforts. So you can see these sorts of, and I've been looking through lots and lots of different things in recent times to see what sort of things people are mentioning. And quite often, actually, it's not necessarily about what they've experienced necessarily, but it's also about, again, that communication. So quite a lot of people it's that mismatch thing, like, oh, we expected this and we got this, and we weren't told this, and when we got there, this happened. So these are the kind of things that if you are able to look at these and monitor these on your reviews, it's going to help you make improvements, because some of these things are so simple to change if it's just a matter of communication, for example. And remember, it's not just an operations issue. Guests are looking at these reviews to, before booking, to understand what to expect. So, obviously really key to have mechanisms in place to ensure that you action these responses. And in also your management responses, that you can reassure future guests. So, perhaps someone writes something that's actually not quite right in their review, then you can use the management response feature to clarify and provide better, clearer communication. And then as just a general ongoing practice, using semantic is really good to identify what your guests really love and promote it as a winning strategy. So often we kind of know instinctively what people love about our product, but it's really good sometimes to actually reinforce that and say, okay, people are mentioning our staff or our experience or certain things that pop out, then make sure that you're promoting that and reinforcing that and making the most of it. So how are guests feeling now? Have a think about, and I'm sure you probably instinctively know this, but how much guest needs have changed. This is a study that was conducted by Fuel Marketing in April, and the consumers were asked, what is the first word that you think of when considering travel right now? And these were the most popular words. So have a think about what ramifications does this have for your own strategy and your own business, and how can you satisfy those needs? Are you addressing them, and how are you communicating to prospective guests that you'll satisfy those needs? We also conducted our own study actually to see what the industry was thinking about how guest behaviour and expectations will change, and if they think it's going to be permanent. So you can see here that 72% of the industry that we surveyed thought that the guest behaviour and expectations will permanently change post this time, even if things will ebb and flow and change a little bit, that there'll be certain things that will be will be permanently changed after this time. As I alluded to previously, as predicted, guests are sharing their experiences and how the experience lived up to their expectations online. And we can also see that this can be both a positive contributor to reinforcing confidence to book or not. So these are just examples across various channels. So as always, it's really important to, as I mentioned at the start, maximise communication and take control in order to, and the reason to do that is to instill confidence, set expectations, and of course, you want to drive bookings. So when you're considering how your communication strategy can help grow your business, think about some of the following things. Clear communication is more important now, I think, than ever. Firstly, it makes your brand accessible and trustworthy. It's really key. It provides a way to clearly communicate laws, regulations, protocols, which satisfy that safety needs of the guests that you saw before. You can establish and highlight things like your new flexible booking policies, for example, you know, be transparent, accessible, and provide assurance for people to book. And then what about things like other protocols in your business, like food and beverage protocols and practices that may have changed? Guests want to know that it's clean, it's safe, available. They want to know things like, well, what are the options going to be for breakfast? I read an interesting LinkedIn post by an industry person that I think they were living in Germany, and they had recently been on a small trip in Germany with their family. They'd stayed in like 3 or 4 different hotels. And he said it was really interesting that, you know, of course, every hotel was different. Everyone had different protocols. Everyone was approaching it differently, which is fine. But he was saying that what was really key for him was the communication, you know, that in some cases he said, you know, they were given all the information and they knew what to expect, and that was fine. Whereas in other cases, you know, maybe if you're going to serve a boxed breakfast, but you're not telling the guests that, if they only find that out the last minute, it's not necessarily a great experience compared to sort of knowing it. So he was kind of saying he felt that, like, as long as you have really good communication in place and set those expectations and communicate with people, that goes a long way, because it will be different in every place. What else? The market is also opting towards automated and touchless technology, which is all around communication. So for many of us, at the moment, we're looking towards a time of technological innovation and a need to bring this to market with speed. And that's what we are seeing as technology providers. We're seeing that whilst you sort of think this could be a quiet time, it is actually a time where a lot of businesses are now sort of looking to probably ramp up their some of their innovation in almost a faster way than they had been previously because of some of these changes and needs. And then finally, really consideration around communication is that we really, really need constant fresh insights into guest behaviour and needs, because of how quickly the situations are evolving. So what people are saying now about their stay and how things are changing so quickly can be completely different tomorrow. Like, I've been saying all along here, 1 week in COVID to me is like 1 year, like in old times. And I think we all feel the same. Like, I'm seeing a friend this weekend I haven't seen since March. And I feel like it's been 2 years since I've seen her. You know, I think we all agree time has just completely warped. If you're interested in looking at a few more tips around hotel, well, this is hotel marketing, but it also applies to tourism businesses. We actually developed a really cool blog post, and it's on the Review Pro website. And we just gathered some tips from various clients around the world around how they're currently approaching marketing. And these are just some of the points, but if you read the full article, you'll see more. But obviously is so important at the moment to engage on social media and have really clear internal communication around your responses on social media as well. Be sure to market with your unique selling point, and remember that this may also have changed because what was your selling point before may not be now, and what you didn't have before may suddenly be a really great unique selling point. So remember that in your, what you had as your marketing strategy before, you may want to adapt and change. Be positive. This is something that many of our clients have said has really worked well for them. Think about your timing. Timing is so important. And let guests know what you're preparing and delivering. I think this is really good, especially I think for social media. use this time to build some anticipation if maybe you're not quite open yet, or things that are happening or changing. I know myself, because I follow a lot of tourism businesses, not only for work but also because I love traveling, and I have seen some really good posts and things where I can see that things are happening, or someone's developing something cool and new and it's coming. And I think that's a really interesting thing that people like to read and anticipate. So maybe think about that. Don't think that just because you're closed or whatever that you can't share anything. So really what's clear is that guest experience feedback will be now important, more than ever, as I've said. Again, the guests are returning to online reviews more than ever. They're going to look to reviews to understand what will be the new protocols and understand what everyone's experiencing. It's important also that you're using feedback to make key changes to the guest experience, while also ensuring that you're using management responses as an opportunity to promote those things that I mentioned before. If guests are mentioning things, then use also that opportunity to elaborate on the new offering. And the same goes for any mentions related to, say, hygiene, if they're positive mentions. What we're classing is hygiene marketing now, to be able to use hygiene as a marketing aspect. But as I said, perhaps if you're someone mentions your new breakfast experience or something, then highlight it and mention it in your response, and maybe elaborate on it. Use the response feature to provide more and more information that's going to be useful when they're making their decisions. If you don't already have one, I highly recommend setting up a management response strategy. We talked about this in the last webinar, actually. We went through some key points around that. But yeah, really, really key. Set up KPIs for both reviews and surveys if you have your own survey. Set time deadlines for responses and guidelines for what reviews to prioritise. Think about how you can steal market share with your response. That's a really key thing. A lot of very smart operators do that in their management response. Make sure that they are really selling their business. You can implement management response templates. So when I say templates, I don't mean just copying the same thing over and over again. You don't want to sound like a robot, but you can provide at least outlines and samples, especially if you've got new staff that may be looking after responding and they're not quite sure what to say. It's useful to provide some templates for them. And also obviously for survey responses. If you're using Review Pro, you can obviously use the Review Pro solution to respond as well. So a good management response, as I've said, can win business, and you can steal business from your competitors. Don't take your responses lightly, and this is not the time to be generic. I think this is a time to really highlight your value. And if you're in a really high position on review platforms, don't miss this as opportunity, because a lot of people are looking. So use this as an opportunity. This is an example where someone has actually had given quite a positive review, and the response was kind of very mediocre, really. It's just kind of like, thanks, that's great, that's it. Like they really should have used the hygiene mention to reinforce and communicate new protocols. And, perhaps this also could be a good review to publish online or pin to the top of review sites and so on. This is just an example of the tip of what we would give as what would be probably maybe a better response. And obviously thank them and mention that, you've invested in new training and health and safety. It's really important to communicate that, and it will reassure people. And then while we're talking about management responses, how about if you have guest surveys? So if you have your own guest survey, this particular, this is a hotel, they respond to every negative and detractor survey. So within their surveys, they're also identifying whether the person's a detractor or a passive or a promoter based on their Net Promoter Score question, which is the question around how likely are you to recommend our business. So that's a fairly common question that's asked in a survey that generates both a score for you as a business, but also classifies each of your guests or your travellers or your customers into buckets, what they call detractors, passive and promoters. and it's a very, very useful tool for promoting loyalty and have a really good understanding of your business. And the Net Promoter Score itself is something that's very valuable that you can use to help value your business, because it's something that's used across industries and is very, very well recognised. So think about that if you have your own surveys. If you're using guest feedback tools, then use the template features to save time, especially for guest surveys. One of my pet hates actually is when I go somewhere and I receive a survey and I fill it out and I don't get a reply. I really hate that, because I feel, because especially with surveys, I usually take quite a bit of time and I give quite specific detail in a survey, because I know that the reason they'd ask me is, to help them there with their business. And when I never hear back, I just think, why? why didn't they reply? So yeah, that's just a bit of, I don't know how you feel when you do it, but that's just how I feel. But I think it's almost pointless sending the survey when you don't actually respond. So while we're talking about guest surveys, if you have surveys, we know that surveys actually give a lot of insight into the guest experience. Obviously along with online reviews is also important. And so if you are using a survey, think about how you can use your guest survey to obtain the kind of detail that you need to know about how guests are feeling you are delivering with the new protocol. So this is just an example of a hotel that's really quickly and expertly adjusted their survey or added a new survey, because many survey solutions, you can have multiple versions of a survey, so you can just build new surveys anytime. So you can have a survey that you always send post-stay and adapt it, or you could, if you just want to do some market research, why not set up a new survey that you send to some of your older clients and just ask for their feedback around things like, test new product, or what you're thinking of charging for something, or, just really sort of do a bit of market research around, what their new preferences are, and so on. And, if you were to offer breakfast box takeaway, what would they pay? All that sort of thing. There's no harm in doing that and asking and getting some research around what the new behaviour will be like. Is quite a useful way to do that. And then if you have when we say in-stay, so if it's a hotel, the in-stay, but if it's another type of operation, while people are on site, think about using surveys there as well. If you've got a survey solution, question logic is very important. So you can use question logic. So for example, if someone rates hygiene low, then you can add in some question logic around drill deeper and find out what areas of hygiene fell short, so that can help you shape recovery. So it's all about sort of digging deeper into that guest behaviour to see how you can change things. And if you are using a post-stay survey that has the access to data from your property management system, there's also some really cool features that you can use to actually profile your guest behaviour sentiment around guest profiling around things like, say, for example, how do the people that booked via my reservation source X, how did they compare with their guest satisfaction compared to another reservation source, or my loyalty guests, or you can even do things like length of stay, or however it is, whatever sort of demographics are within your own PMS system, you can adjust and see your survey results alongside those things if your guest survey system has that facility. So increasing review volume, as I mentioned before, it's really important and really important at this time. So think about how you're going to boost review volume, ask for reviews. I've mentioned this before, and it's quite a question around, how do we grow reviews? Just really asking for them. I mentioned before about how I did my own sort of road trip and went away. And I received a survey from them afterwards, and I thought quite a nice thing that they did was they asked for me to write a review and said, we'd really love you to write a review, which is great. But they also mentioned, and I think this is something that we shouldn't be shy to do at this time, they mentioned, that that reviews are so important to us, especially at this time. And that, to be honest, that actually literally prompted me to go and write the review, because I had been thinking about doing it, but I just hadn't got around to it. But having a trigger, so someone emails me, it's there, I'm at my computer, it's an easy time to write the review, and then giving me that kind of little feeling of slight guilt to kind of go, hey, we're really hurting at the moment, we really need reviews, please would you review us? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to help them, because that, you know, they need all the help they can get. So I think this is probably a good time to kind of like leverage that, and don't be shy, and be honest and say, you know, this is a time where, as you probably know, the industries in Australia, we're in recovery, and one of the best things that you can do, one of the biggest compliments you can pay us, is to write a review. You know, it's really just asking, and people will. And as you probably know, at the moment, there's a real sentiment in Australia to obviously help everyone else, you know, so ask for them, and that's a good way to grow your review volume. So I'm going to move on now to the new guest, and just have a think about, or the new traveller, maybe we could term it. Obviously, you know, so much has changed in our world, and we've coined this phrase, you know, the new guest, which really captures how much change has occurred in the customer experience, and also in expectations. It's really important to understand the shift in consumption patterns and think about how you're going to address them. So have a think about specifically around your business. So, you know, what stay preferences do they have now, or when they're when they're going to come and experience your offering? What are the kind of things that they're going to prefer now as opposed to previously, and how you're going to address those? What change to the product do they want? And alluding back before, you know, maybe do some market research around this, or read your reviews, or read the feedback. Focus on the switch in customer perceptions. So this is interesting, because this has really probably changed a lot for many people, like market strength of certain things previous to now, and where you sit in that. So for example, maybe an apartment hotel in the past, people's perception of an apartment now might be slightly different to before, because of their needs now. So if people are looking for being self-sufficient in kitchens and feel like that's a good way to social distance and have that safety, then maybe that's now a market strength that maybe you didn't have before, you know, so something to think about, focusing on that. And in destination marketing, you know, if we look at, you know, actually you guys are a classic example of that, you know, perception has always been that Northern Territory is a great getaway place, and so on. But now, you know, that's so much stronger than it was before, because people are looking for that now. So, and that plays not just to the destination as a whole, but you as an operator, obviously in that destination, and how you can sort of play on that. Many of the review platforms have really quickly responded to the new guest, and they're already adapted their website to accommodate this shift, because review platforms and third-party sites are all about providing relevance to the user. They want people to stay on the site, they want them to book, and so on. And so they are always looking at what people are looking for, what they want, and this is part of that. So this is going to obviously clearly impact on your business in terms of where and when you're going to return a search results. And even your ranking in some cases. So TripAdvisor is one example. They have introduced a new travel safe initiative. I'm not sure if you've seen it. Recommend that you just Google it and you'll be able to find it and read about it. You probably get communication from them as well. But yeah, have a look at that, and it allows you to add a customizable checklist of your safety measures to your listing pages. As they mention in their communication about this, they will also be adding a COVID-19 safety search filter for each destination. So someone can, and so obviously it's going to result in higher visibility for participating businesses, for people that are safety focused. So if they're looking for safety features, they're going to find those people quicker than others. They're also enhancing their traveller review form. So when they ask you for a review, to gather feedback about safety experience at every property. So now when you fill out a review, there will be some specific questions about how you felt that business handled the safety aspect, so that they can collect that data as well. And a really small change to TripAdvisor. They've moved their A from a big A to a small A in their logo.
Yeah, right.
It's a big change. They've always had the TripAdvisor with a big A. I don't know why they changed it, but they've changed it overnight. So there you go. Small details. So we have a poll question. Thought we'd get you involved. We have a question here. I think that Stephen's put. Oh yeah, he's already put it up on the site there. So this is about messaging. So guest messaging and how you message guests or how you allow them to message you. So do you have a messaging strategy in place for 2020? So you can either answer yes and it's working well, yes, but it's not working so well, yes, but maybe it's not live, no, but we'd like one, or no, this isn't for us. So if you want to take a couple of seconds to submit your answer to this, then that would be great. And I think Stephen will be able to bring up the responses when he's ready.
Let's do it.
Ah, cool. Okay, so the biggest percentage is people that say no, but we would like one. Okay, and no, this isn't for us. So yeah, so this is kind of a pattern we're seeing. I think there's a generally a trend that messaging is something that is people becoming aware of and thinking they probably need to address it, but maybe haven't done so yet. I'm going to talk a little bit about messaging actually as we move along. So the final topic today is around AI and automation and how it's changing the guest experience. This topic is something that, as we already have, it was already having an increasing impact in the hospitality and tourism industry, but has kind of been propelled forward in like a fast forward, if you like, due to all the changing factors that we've covered so far today. And I've alluded to that earlier, where we're seeing businesses kind of start to adopt new technology quicker because of this. For all the reasons we've talked about, both from changing guest needs and expectations, communication preferences of the guest and the traveller, to also the other side, to yours as a business, changing challenges around effectively managing guest communication across multiple channels and platforms. Because even if you don't have messaging, not looking for it, don't think it's relevant, you've probably got Messenger on your Facebook page and you're probably getting messaged. Someone's probably got someone's mobile number and they're messaging them via SMS. I hear this all the time actually from businesses say, oh, we still, we get these messages and, that come through our Messenger and so on. So that's a challenge. Also, we're working with less resources, pretty much all of us. And also there's this need now for guests to have these clear guidelines, and they want speed. They need to know it now. They want to know it now. Not just about things happening now, but just generally, this is just the trend. And all of this is culminated in what we see as a speeding up of adoption of new technology as a solution to effectively manage communication, and ultimately also steal business from competitors that are not answering so fast or so easily or so flexibly. So a type of automation that's really taken off in recent years is chatbots. A chatbot is if those who don't know, is a computer program that's designed to simulate conversations with human users. And there's a couple of types. A simple chatbot provides answers to users' questions just by matching questions with predefined answers. A more advanced chatbot uses artificial intelligence to learn and improve on its own and expand its range of questions and answers the more it interacts with users. Many chatbots use NLP, if you've heard of that, natural language processing. Examples of that are things they're found in Google Search, Google Translate, Invoice Assistance, and predictive text and so on use NLP. If you use Review Pro and you're familiar with our semantic analysis, we use NLP to interpret the meaning of guest comments in reviews and surveys. So chatbots are kind of a natural product of the explosive growth of messaging in recent years, which in itself, messaging has been driven by the ubiquity of smartphones. And today we can encounter chatbots everywhere online, from our phone company to insurance and so on. In the past, you might have found using chatbots a bit of a frustrating experience. And you ended up requiring the intervention of a live employee. But in more recent times, chatbots have actually become much smarter and much more self-sufficient. the better chatbots become and the more we encounter them, the more we're going to come to expect them. And maybe sometimes even prefer them as a customer service option. I know that I've had some actual really positive experiences with chatbots recently, and I'm starting to get more and more used to them. And I'm now also starting to expect them on websites when I go to visit them. And I almost find it a bit frustrating when they don't have one, to have the ability to have a chat. So, and I actually, I'm not going to call out who it was, but I was actually investigating coming to the Northern Territory, and I was looking at a website and they didn't have one. And I just, to be honest, I switched off and went somewhere else because I just couldn't find the information I needed, and I wanted it right there and then. So, and that's honest, but I won't say who it was. Anyway, so if you look around in the press, what you're seeing is AI is becoming very visible in our world. It's been with us for a few years, but we haven't really noticed it because quite often it was kind of in the background. But, you know, as I said, it's how Google decides what to show you in search results. It's how Spotify recommend the music, amazingly, that you like. My father was so amazed when he got onto Spotify. He cannot believe that it knows that he likes Roger Whittaker and likes all the music that he likes and doesn't know that it's AI behind there. But we're becoming face-to-face with it more often, and AI and automation is becoming much more in a direct way. And many people are predicting that it's going to have a huge influence in our society and how we live and how we work. So we have to really think, how is that going to affect us in the tourism industry, and how are we going to react? So this Business Insider did a study, and they found that 45% of customers actually don't even care if they're served by a human or a robot, as long as they're served well and quickly. And that's just growing. So people are just becoming more and more, I think partly due to the fact that people are becoming more used to having speedy responses. They're preferring to have a speedy response maybe than a personal one. It's just kind of the way that it occurs. And in tourism and travel and hospitality, and I'm a hotel girl from way back, the initial thought of that kind of just goes, oh, but you know, we're all about people. But at the end of the day, there are actually a lot of questions and things that people ask that actually can be really quickly answered by something else that you can spend your time more effectively giving great customer service elsewhere. So I'm sure I don't need to tell you that guests want to communicate in new ways as well. So not just about chatbots, but just generally about mobile, and mobile is the center of that. It's not only about providing convenience and flexibility, but it also means you can actually redefine and enhance your guest experience in terms of the way you're communicating with guests and prospective travelers. It kind of goes beyond convenience. It improves service often, and it drives long-term loyalty. And it also provides more data to help you transform the guest experience, because it's another way of collecting feedback and what people are saying and what they're liking and what they're not liking. And most importantly, it meets the demands of guests now. So, you know, really have a think about that for your business. This image is from a study carried out around in-home media consumption during the coronavirus. I'm sure it's not surprising to you that worldwide messaging services like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, etc., have seen an increase of 45% overall in usage. The study also found that all age groups across the various generations are spending more time on these messaging channels, even down to the baby boomers. Everyone's now used to just using a more digital experience. So this is something that, again, is maybe something that has changed much more quickly than maybe we anticipated around things like demographics, that in the past, quite often I would hear from clients, and we have a lot of clients that their main demographic is the baby boomers. In the past, they were like, nah, they don't really use messaging. Now, I don't know about you, but my parents-in-law, you know, they're all over WhatsApp. They're having Zoom, they're doing Zoom yoga and stuff like that, and they're in their 70s, you know, so now they're WhatsApping us, you know, and it's all through this, again, it's kind of, this situation has kind of propelled a lot of people, not only just on a social level, but commercially as well. So once you start using it socially, it's like anything, you start getting to use it commercially as well. And, you know, being able to message a business and get an answer, all those things are just starting to become part of normal life. So what does this mean for tourism businesses? How are we going to apply this to our business? Maybe what are the problems and opportunities that we have as tourism businesses to think about as we go into this kind of new wave of AI. And I wonder if any of you are using any AI driven tools in your business. So over the past couple of years, we have been providing a guest messaging hub to our clients as a solution to help improve communication with their guests prior, during and post stay. And the tool was really well adopted. So it's just a basic guest messaging platform that allowed them to offer various guest messaging platforms in one interface and respond. And it was well adopted, but a lot of people struggled to cope with the number of messages received. And in many cases, the messages had been responded to after the guest had left, or maybe not even at all. So this is, how do we overcome that? We also found that the number of questions, because over time we could see the sort of questions people were asking, and also we surveyed the clients, and we found that basically pretty much from across the board, regardless of what type of business it was, whether it was a luxury to a youth hostel to whatever, it's pretty much the same set of questions that people ask all the time. So it's, for a hotel, it's like, how do I get there? What time's check-in? And so on. And for example, a chain of 30 city hotels, 63% of their messages came in were asking the same 8 questions. So imagine all the time that was taken up of them physically responding to all those same 8 questions that could pretty much be answered by something else. Also, we found that people are asking the same basic questions that they actually already have in their email when they receive their confirmation, or information they have in their room, or the information you provide to them on check-in or when you start. It's going back to that way that we have changed in the way that we want information. We want it now. We don't want to go back into our email confirmation and find it. We want to just go message them. Oh, I'll just message them. They'll answer me. That is the way people just expecting to receive information and making it more flexible. So, and then you think about the capacity of contact centres, of our reservations people, of, you've got small businesses that are often very limited with resources, and they're having to answer these constantly, a transferal of just very basic information, which is very important to the guest, obviously, but it's a huge amount of noise that's getting in the way of maybe being able to sell something, or being able to, your reception, offering a speedier, more efficient service, and less queues and all these things. So, it's, as we move forward, messaging is going to become a key channel of communication for everyone. So, as we move into this new era of guest experience, it will become more relevant than ever to ensure that any communication toward the guest is clear and concise as possible. The communication the guests will be looking for will be to ensure that they are clear on what the local regulations are. So this is all sort of considering not just messaging, but also about what sort of information people are wanting to obtain. And ensuring that you have the right technology in place is going to be key to help with the fact that businesses are likely to have less staff. You're likely to cover less languages maybe than you have before. Some of the people have left. And due to the new protocols, there's going to be less time available to everyone. So people are really turning to this new technology now to help them as we move into this kind of contactless space and this kind of need for more information. So consider how you're going to communicate with your travellers and your guests at each stage of the guest journey. This is really important. Looking, when they're initially looking, to booking, to getting ready, to in-stay, or while they're during the experience, and also afterwards. So this is all about, again, about communication. How are you going to communicate with them during all those times, and how you're going to maximise that, how you're going to provide them something that's convenient for them, that's flexible, that gives them the information that they need when they need it now. Maybe providing your guests with messaging platforms of their choice to communicate with you, and maybe a chatbot to answer those questions across those platforms and your website. maybe that can provide a solution that's going to propel your guest experience forward and also save some time and money. I'm not saying this is for everyone, but it's just I wanted to introduce it as a topic to sort of consider, maybe if it's not for now, but something to consider for future. And think about things like, you know, the guest journey. It begins pre-stay. So this is an example of someone asking a question. I think this is from a youth hostel. And they're coming and their flights don't arrive till late. What's the easiest way to get to the hostel? You know, these are the sort of things people ask all the time. There's, again, the sort of same sort of questions pre-stay. And then during stay, people asking, you know, can I get a cuppa and a cake? And how you can answer that, what's going on. And of course, post-stay, someone leaves and they leave something there. So think about all these ways and ways that people will want to communicate with you through that whole process in terms of your business. So we have ReviewPro has a platform like this. There are many chatbots. There are many messaging platforms. We're certainly not the only one. But we do have a platform. It's the newest solution that we have, and it's a platform that includes a chatbot, a pre-filled knowledge base, and the option to use and offer multiple channels. And it's backed up by cases and workflows, and we provide ROI based analytics around how it's performing. It's a fairly sophisticated platform, so that for some people it actually ticks a few boxes in terms of. Some people might have a chatbot solution and they might have a messaging solution, and this kind of has it all in one. Our one at the moment is for hotels only, even though our other solutions like surveys and so on are applied across all businesses. This particular solution has just launched, and we're starting off with the accommodation side, but it'll be growing, and eventually it will move into other types of businesses as well, across like we do with everything else. I just thought I'd mention at the end, because if anyone specifically interested in something like that, you know, you can get in touch and we can cover that. So yeah, I think I've gone a little bit over time. Stephen hates it when I do that. Yeah, just in summary, just to circle back to the topic today was about communication. So I wanted to really cover that across every aspect of that. And if you want to drive trust and bookings, it's really critical that you consider the new guest. You know, think about what changes have occurred, understand their needs and wants, and how you're going to provide them and how you're going to communicate them. Have a mechanism to keep constantly accessing changing guest feedback and needs. So, you know, utilize those reports that Tourism NT send you, utilize your own tools, and understand what is changing. Use your communication methods like your management responses to stay on top of your reputation, and ensure that you are the business of choice. And finally, my last word is about what I talked about in that last part of the session, which is really about what I would say future-proofing your business. Think about maybe how AI and automation can improve your own guest experience, and ensure that you can meet guest demands throughout the guest journey. So I think that's it from me. I don't know if we have time for any questions. I think there might have been a couple previously. So I'll just throw to Anna and Stephen and see if there's any questions there that I can cover.
Yeah, thank you, Avril. That was really interesting. I've definitely got a few questions for you. There's a couple that came up in the chat as well, and I think Stephen might have a couple of questions to start off with.
Yes, I do. Avril, thanks for that. That was really cool. I really like the idea of having right now that even the older people, the older generation, are having that slipstream and getting towards using technology, and being able to use it really well as well. I guess NT specific question would be, how do I balance using this technology and all the contactless services that for guests now, but how do you also still show a smiling face? NT's known for hospitality, asking a local, having a smile. How can we get that balance?
Of how you're managing your feedback and so on? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and I guess we've got all of this communication that we can do with reviews and whatnot, and then like on the front end, it's also you've got the customer service. It's how do we get the balance of not having too much technology and then losing the touch with the customer?
I think if you maybe look at it kind of like an extension of your customer facing, so think about it as all. I would think of it as holistically as everything. Like customer service is it's face to face, it's via SMS, it's via your reviews, like, and just look at it as one. And if you approach it all in the same way, I think being able to develop your own business personality, and in the same way that you would do that, maybe think about the way you speak and the way that you deal with people and what's your personality. And when when you're face to face with people, that you sort of follow that with your other communications, like your messaging. And if you kind of keep that same tone, if you like, I guess, is a good way. And then it feels like it's all the same thing. It's just an extension of, as opposed to, oh, this is face to face and this is not. But actually it's really all the same thing, because in some cases people will have face to face with you, but then when they go to their room, they just want to message you, but you want to sort of still get the same consistent feel for how you're approaching it. So just approach it all the same way. That would be my thoughts on that, I guess.
Thank you. No, that's helpful. One more question for me, which is, you touched on it, that a week in these recent times feels like a year. We might have responded to a review maybe a month or two ago. Is it okay for us to respond to the same review twice if there have been changes?
Well, most platforms don't allow you to add an extension of a response, and once you've added the response, it's there. So I would then just look to another review in the future and just update, make sure that your new responses, maybe you could if things have changed and maybe you're adding a new response to a new review, you could even mention something like, since March, we've even changed things again. As you know, things are constantly evolving, and we're constantly changing, sort of add it into your newer responses. That's what I would do. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I've got a question that a little bit leads on from that. So sometimes people leave reviews, obviously they're for the businesses that we've all worked really hard to get up and running, and it can feel really hurtful when someone leaves a negative review. How would you sort of manage state of mind? How important is state of mind when responding to a review?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of articles and things that I've seen around this, around sort of general practice around responding to reviews, around trying not to take it personally, and so on. I know there's quite a bit on some of the recommendations are occasionally it's a case of, if you can take some time out before you respond, and the other best practice is always, like, before you don't respond straight to the channel, like write your response somewhere else first, and then read it again before you actually publish it, because sometimes your initial response can be kind of emotionally charged. And then maybe if it's something that's really affecting you, that you can have someone else that you delegate responses to that's not as close to the situation. I know that's not always easy. It's not always possible, because sometimes it's really small business and you're the only one. But I know of operators that even get their family members to respond that are kind of know about the business but are not personally involved in it, and so it helps because that they can kind of keep a slight distance and respond to just to some of those more negative reviews that maybe they are getting emotionally, but try to sort of take the emotion out of it, and always remember that when you're responding, the majority of people that are reading the response are actually prospective people. So again, keep your personality, your voice, keep it light. Just stick to the facts and keep it that way.
Nice. And we got a really interesting comment from Lindy while you were talking about people being too relaxed when they come to the territory, because the territory has almost been marketed as a place to escape from the virus. But obviously the reason we're so safe is because we've all been pretty hot on social distancing and cleaning practices and things like that. So this is actually kind of a two-part question. So there's, like, on the one hand, there are people who are coming into businesses and not taking their cleaning practices seriously. But then on the other hand, there are also some businesses that maybe aren't taking their own cleaning practices seriously. Do people care that much when they're traveling about sort of managing their impact when it comes to this virus?
Well, to be honest, my guess is as good as yours on that one. I'd like to think that people care. You know, I mean, you see things in the news that you feel like some people are not paying attention. I guess it's I think overall people are fairly cognizant of it. But again, it comes back to, I think, to communication, like I was saying, and being able to try to sort of communicate as much as possible, as best as you can, about what you're doing to take steps, and why it's important, and why it's important to your business and how they can affect it, I suppose. And again, sort of maybe going back to what I was saying before about appealing to people's better nature when you're asking for a review. Maybe it's the same thing with adhering to those practices. Maybe that same approach to say, maybe out of, again, sort of more, because I think a lot of these protocols and things, people feel like it's orders, it's, you know, because it is very kind of dry, isn't it? Like, we, you know, following this and you must like stand here at the bar and do this, you know. I guess as much as you can sort of inject some of your own personality into it to make it sound, you know, like, you know, friendly and so on, I guess is maybe a thought around that.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like that, communicating about why it's important to your business specifically. And the territory is massive. Staying 1.5 meters apart shouldn't be difficult. So
yeah, that's true.
You mentioned something. You mentioned sending surveys out to guests to ask them about their experiences specifically. And I thought it was really great and really interesting that you kind of encouraged businesses to include questions about their cleaning practices and coronavirus.
Yeah.
What should businesses do with the responses from these surveys?
Well, you should definitely respond to the person that's giving you the feedback, and use the response to help shape your own practices. I think it's a really good sort of indication of what people think and what they want and their expectations are, and, you know, use it to measure against what you're already providing, and, you know, what you can possibly change if you need to.
Yeah, that's good. That's helpful. I've got a couple of questions about chatbots. Very interesting topic. So how much does it actually cost to get a chatbot, and would that just be for use on a website, or would it be something that could be used on social media as well?
Yeah, so not a simple answer well, it's a simple answer to cost and things like that, but there's different levels that you can use and opportunities that you can use the chatbot for, but essentially you can use it for all those things. So you can use the chatbot to answer messaging if you're offering those platforms, and on your website and web messenger. So you can use all those things, but you can decide which messaging channels that you offer, right? So what I mean by that is, you might decide that you are just going to have the chatbot and the messaging on your website via a web messenger, but you can still use the web messenger platform to give to people to message you, you know, from their phone, for example, while they're in stay. So what I mean by that is, you could have the chatbot on your website for people to come onto your website and just, you know, organically ask you questions, but you might proactively also, while they're there, while they're staying, or while they're using experience, they could say, you could say, look, if you need to message us while you're here, here's a link, and they just use that link, and it happens to be your web message. It's like a landing page, and they just use it like a message platform. They don't have to have access to that of their own, and they can message you via that. Or you could say, well, actually, you know what, we want to offer guests the ability to WhatsApp us or SMS us. Then you can add those channels in as options so they can message you via those platforms. Majority of businesses that start with something like this will usually just start very simple and start, quite honestly, just with web messenger and the chatbot on their website. Maybe they'll integrate Messenger, which is the Facebook Messenger, because a lot of businesses already have mostly have a Facebook page, and majority have the Messenger account as well. Some of them don't have that activated, so don't use it, but some do. So if you've already got that, then you can just basically integrate it into the interface and your messages will come into the same platform, and they could potentially be answered by the chatbot. I hope that sort of answered the question properly.
Yeah.
Oh, and you asked about cost. So, I mean, I can't speak for all other chatbots, and there's so many, as I said, there's so many chatbots and so many messaging platforms and all that kind of thing. But I can give you an indication of the guest experience automation solution that I showed you before. That's the comprehensive platform that includes the messaging and the chatbot and the web messenger and so on. In Aussie dollars, the starting rate is $155 a month. And at the moment, we actually have we've actually got a bit of a launch offer as well till the end of the year, but because we've just launched it. But as I said, at the moment, it's only for hotels because it's new. We've started it. It was just starting off. We always kind of start and then grow it. But that's an indication from my side. Not sure about the other, investigate various solutions and so on. Quite often what we found with chatbots is that, or the feedback we've had from clients that had actually looked at chatbots in the past, was a lot of them, they're sort of a bit more like a project. So if you're going to start with a chatbot, they kind of start from scratch and they build it. And that kind of can involve a bit of time, and it's a bit of a project and so on, and can possibly be more expensive. So one of the advantages definitely of the Review Pro one is that we've kind of already built the chatbot because we already work with hospitality business. We've predefined a lot of the flows of what people ask and what they, the sort of flows and sort of things that people ask. So it's a much more, it's something you can apply pretty quickly with speed, as opposed to some other chatbots that might take a lot more time. That's kind of the feedback I've had. Yeah,
that's a really interesting comment about the kinds of questions that people ask as well. Like in the Northern Territory, we get such a diversity of visitors coming from all over the world, and different people ask different questions, and different people ask the same question in different ways. And just ensuring that the chatbot has got that diversity of language and content covered is so important, because you wouldn't want it to represent your business in the wrong way, which would be probably my first concern.
Yeah, and there's also you can intervene in the chatbot as well, so you can take over the conversation. So if you're concerned about it, not many people actually do. It's funny, it's one of those things. It's like a control thing. I think we want to be able to take it over. What actually happens is that people don't really, because what will happen is, if the chatbot can't answer the question, then you have certain flows set up so that it would then escalate it to an agent, and you have an alternative method for that. So they'll receive a thing saying, we can't help you, but someone will help you. And then there'll be an automatic case will be generated. You'll be able to cover it. You'll still be able to reply, all those sorts of things. But then what happens is that if it was something that for some reason the knowledge base didn't know about your business, so maybe, for example, someone asks you, you have a gym, but maybe and that says yes, and you ask the time, but maybe for some reason your knowledge base doesn't have the opening times in it because you haven't updated it. When that doesn't get answered, because we have I mentioned there's what we call the ROI and the analytics space, the chat you'll know these are the questions we couldn't answer, and then you can go back into your knowledge base and you just update it and say, oh, okay, it didn't know our gym opening times, right, we'll add it in. I should have also mentioned that you can also add in things especially around things like COVID. So you could add in some paragraphs around, so at the moment, what you normally say about the gym is this, but you can have a thing saying, click on this for the COVID information. They'll click on it and it will say, during COVID, this is the protocols for the gym. So it's actually quite convenient. It doesn't have to have one answer based on specifics that happen in your business all the time. You can adjust it according to what's going on at the time.
That's really interesting. My final question for you, Avril, is how do people get in touch with you to discuss the Review Pro chatbot?
So you can either go to the website and just request a demo. So you just click on a request a demo, or you just email me directly. And my email is acarter, so my surname's acarter@reviewpro.com. Perhaps if you guys, I don't know if you have a mechanism after the webinar, you can maybe, I think we normally share the deck as well, don't we? So
yeah.
That you can provide my email address as well. But just contact me or request a demo via the website if you've forgotten.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. That was great. Stephen, do you have any more questions? Are there any more questions from the audience?
All good. I think we've also run out of questions from the audience for now.
Okay.
Happy to close.
Yep, very good. Thank you so much, Avril. That was so insightful. So many interesting little things to think about there and take away. That was really wonderful, and I hope that we do get you back again at some point in the future to talk about reviews. It's such an important topic.
Happy to any time, and I'd love to actually get. So I thought you were going to say come back to the territory. I still want to come to the territory. I'm thinking about getting in my car and driving. Actually, I was thinking how far it would be. Yeah.
Do it. It's the best doing a long drive to the territory. Yeah. You get to stop into all of the roadhouses, and you meet so many amazing people. It's
Yeah.
Very good. So next week we are hosting Scott and Claire Crowley from the Good Scout, and they'll be talking about accessible travel. So Scott from the Good Scout is a wheelchair user, and he has some really deep insights into what works and what doesn't work when traveling. And the Good Scout team have seen this huge gap in the market, and they can sort of share information with businesses about how to make the most of this, this big opportunity. And next week's session will actually be the last of our scheduled Power Up tutorials. So time to jump in, say hi and bye, guys. I've got a couple of quick announcements just to end the session with. So Veep Round 4 is open. We've got about another month roughly to apply, and I'm just posting a link to Veep Round 4 in the chat. So if you have got any plans that you haven't started working on yet to do upgrades to your business, generally it's physical infrastructure upgrades that are accepted, and you've got sort of, you know, half the costs of, it's a dollar for dollar grant. So if you can afford to pay for half of the upgrades, then you can get the other half funded, which is really wonderful. So I'm just about to share a little link to the Power Up tutorial website for anyone who hasn't got it to hand. It's worth clicking on that now and registering for next week's session. And there'll be a little reminder sent out with a link to jump into the session next week as well. And then for any sessions that you've missed, we have actually got recordings up online. There has been some really great content. That was Avril's first session that's up online at the moment. It's a great way to come up with a bit of inspiration if you're looking for wording to respond to reviews. And that is more or less it from me, guys. I'll just share Stephen and my contact details a second time. So if you feel like having a business enterprise meeting with us, drop us a line. If you're based in Central Australia, that's me. If you're in the top end, it's Stephen who would be doing that with you. And I'm looking forward to seeing a couple of you who are online shortly, actually. So see you guys next week.
See ya.